P-A-R-T. P-A-R-T. Why? Because I gotta.
Hello everyone, thank you for tuning into part 2. Hope you enjoyed part 1. As I've said before, any of the videos I share on my channel are meant to be shared as educationally entertaining, but theoretical nonetheless. Especially on a topic like this where we dive a bit on different behavioral and personality disorders that affect our mental health and community, to which by all accounts is not to be utilized as a means of self-diagnosis. Anyone who struggles with mental health should always speak to a loved one and seek professional help from psychiatrists and other mental health experts. With that all said and done, let us proceed.
Oh, good grief.
Next on our list we have shadow, or a bit more specific, the shadow persona. Remember in the previous video when we talked a bit about reflection in the examples of MPD and projection?
Oh yeah, that? How could I forget?
Well, some of the elements from the last one reflects, no pun intended, into this definition.
Pun intended?
I'm sorry, what pun?
This is part of Carl Jung's archetypes that is of great acknowledgement to be considered. This is by far the most self-explanatory yet deeply complex idea of the darkest parts of our personality being hidden deep within, and only ever exhibited in the history books as we know it. This persona is part of an unconscious aspect of our personality that is considered a blind spot both internally and externally. This is a part of ourselves that locks away our positive aspect when certain avenues in our life have been the byproduct of humanity's competitive and cruel sides of the coin. Those who suffer from depression find it difficult to think of the positives, because the shadow persona locks away our positive frames of mind, for which blocks the release of serotonin and good dopamine essential to the positive framework and replaces it with myonomase oxidase A. Now, there are more sides to the shadow persona than just this aspect. It has primordial concepts to consider. Remember the biblical story of Cain and Abel? Those who have already know what happens at the end. The shadow persona can be at times similar to the Cain aspects of our persona.
It is a war waged against evil, yet the evil is within.
Also, another relation to the concept of the shadow persona is the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. In the story, the doctor conducts experiments in order to figure out the other personalities in both the conscious and subconscious, including the darker parts of our personalities. When the experiments went catastrophic, the aftermath changed Dr. Jekyll into Mr. Hyde, the dark side of Dr. Jekyll, and committed a lot of treacherous acts, such as murder, rape, and so on.
Dr. Jekyll, you are wanted by the Knights of the Holy Order.
Mr. Hyde now.
For the murder of 12 men, 6 women, 4
children, 3 goats, and a rather nasty massacre of poultry.
Of course, the most modern adaptation of this concept is none other than the Incredible Hulk.
Hulk like fire, Thor like water,
Oh, kind of both like fire.
and Hulk like real fire. Hulk like raging fire, Thor like smoldering fire.
Now, if it's starting to make sense, let us talk about one last aspect that is crucial in this conversation about the shadow persona. While it is a part of the unconscious that, if triggered, can result in certain consequences, we have to keep in mind that this is something that cannot be ultimately destroyed either.
Why?
Reason being that it is a crucial element in Jung's archetypes, in which the ultimate endgame is to reach the pinnacle of all personas, the individuation process. According to Jung, if this potential is reached, it is equivalent of Satori, Nirvana, Enlightenment, the Übermensch, in short, the true being behind all the personas and egos. In order to do that, our shadow persona, ego, persona, and the rest of the archetypes must be
perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
In a manner of speaking, considering that this is mostly a theory within the lore of Jungian psychology, without actual evidence, this is considered to be skeptical at best. Though I would love for this idea of individuation to become reality, there are a myriad of entanglements that go on in our neurons that are practically the equivalent to our galaxy, if not a greater portion of our observable universe.
What? How big am I?
I'd say a golden retriever.
But a golden retriever's brain is small.
No, like the size of a golden retriever.
Coach, what the hell, man?
I think at this point I dragged on this acronym topic a bit longer than I expected. Let's move on to the next one.
Next.
Objectivism. To be honest, this was difficult to research if this had any connection to the concepts of persona. Originally, I was thinking of the term as derived from Søren Kierkegaard's philosophies regarding the subjective and objective truths. And although I've read one of his books, I didn't have a complete grasp on the philosophical ideas of this notion, thus recollecting on the basis of the subjective and the objective. The subjective is only some truths externally categorized or identified about the individual, while the objective is clarified as what is needed in the world, as well as trajectory goals from an internal perspective. Hence, the subjective fits more with the psychological concepts of persona, since the individual doesn't rely on external experiences to define the truth, but relies on their own thoughts and process on reality itself in one's mind.
Don't know, I've gone cross-eyed.
Believe me, it's conflicting. I'll try to make better sense of this idea in a moment. Since the subjective is something that should have taken the shadow's place in the acronym, I needed to find another way to figure out if objectivism holds a place in this acronym.
Well, we're waiting.
Okay, I'll just wing it then. Upon further research, there is a definition of objectivism to consider. While Søren Kierkegaard first dawned upon this idea, there was a 20th century philosopher by the name of Ayn Rand who expands upon the concept of objectivism. Her study into this brought upon the women's civil rights movement in relation to the philosophical system itself. According to Wikipedia, particularly in this paragraph, objectivism's main tenets are that reality exists independently of consciousness, that human beings have direct contact with reality through sense perception, that one can attain objective knowledge from perception through the process of concept formation and inductive logic, and that proper moral purposes of one's life is the pursuit of one's own happiness. Now, obviously, this holds a lot of political dichotomies, considering what the end results were within the formations of movements and revolutions. However, it does convey this idea by the examples of book reading, going to a museum, or seeing something on the news. Thus, naturally, holds more reality than the perceived realities we conceptualize consciously.
There's no connection there.
Yeah, contrary to my disdain, this seems to go into the opposite direction. It almost wants to indicate that rationalism is an afterthought and that empiricism is the only normality in everyday thinking. And honestly, this relates to the modern world today.
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented.
Honestly, I am drawing blanks on this idea.
Are you sure?
Then again, these external sensory experiences that gives us a sense of reality is what inevitably gives us a notion of our egos and personas in a particular sense. What we see on TV, like on the news, gives us whatever perceptions we thought of before and changes dramatically. Take 9/11 for example. After this catastrophic event, we changed as a society as a result.
9/11.
What about our traffic problem?
9/11.
That was in terrible taste.
Anyway, this is an example of how external events of reality affect and conflict with a person's internal reality. The moment we see something on TV or Facebook, we could have our viewpoints changed in an instant if we were not skeptical enough to question the very nature of these posts and the illegitimacy behind it.
Facebook says it's true.
But it's not true.
But Facebook says it's true.
Okay, but it's not true.
At this point, I think this is as best as I can represent.
Oh, finally!
Next on the list will be neurological.
Yeah.
Now, this should be more on the nose and relate to all that have been discussed so far. Of course, there is more science than psychological or philosophical that goes on into this. Nevertheless, you should always research as much as possible. Just don't overwork your brain to the point of a major headache, like I did.
I know how you feel. I got a knife slicing through my frontal lobe too.
Now, of course, the exact definition is a bit of a shitstorm, because the basis of the definition generally talks about this in medical terms, from neuroscience to neurological disorders. So, I want to go a bit deeper into a different term that fits the bill of what I will be talking about in this acronym.
Enough! Do you want my head to explode? No more for today!
This description fits the puzzle. Neuroscience, in a broad sense, is all the science that deals with the structure and functioning of the brain and nervous system, which splits to different branches based on the research of brain chemistry to experimental psychology. More specifically, cognitive, behavioral, and social neuropathy can just about fit the bill with what the persona entails. The moment we are born, we go through chapters in our life where our brain picks up on the things we see, smell, touch, etc. All of those senses composite itself into a pool of knowledge, and that knowledge fluctuates with each experience. As a result, every experience and knowledge we gain along the way formulates our sense of being. Thus, naturally, we use what we have accumulated to shape our being into a name to be identified and realized. Heck, even our names are to be considered as personas. Think about that for a moment.
Because in the image of Alan Watts, there are not all my unconscious processes, both psychological and physical. The construction of my brain is not contained in the concept Alan Watts.
Cogitor ergo sum. I am thought, therefore I am. We are thought by an immensely much larger subliminal mind than this conscious ego of which we are aware.
The persona is partially presenting themselves. He may even identify himself with it and believe that he is what he appears to be, corresponding to the general expectation.
After all, there is the conscious and the unconscious. There is the respectable persona and the generally rather disreputable psychophysiological reality which lies beneath it.
Every moment is coded into our brain, while certain aspects like diet, exercise, and especially sleep are crucial for our brain chemistry health and can impact our behavior. We can't deny that regardless of the circumstances or situations we go through, the moment we see what cannot be seen or hear what cannot be heard, our perspective on things in life change in an instant.
I've seen things you could not imagine. For goodness sake.
The most common idea that combines the persona and neurological constructs is the collective unconscious theory. Proponents of the collective unconscious theory suggest that mental commonalities in humans originate especially from the subcortical area of the brain, specifically the thalamus and the limbic system. These centrally located structures link the brain to the rest of the nervous system and are said to control vital processes. All of these theories and psychological research behind it gives us the indication that people naturally construct and engage with comprehensive depictions of others, and that people organize themselves and those around them on the basis of categories. Such categorizations take place at various levels. An individual's identity is conceived on the basis of idiosyncratic characteristics, in combination with the characteristics and values of the communities they belong to. In short, the way that the persona could relate to the theory of the collective unconscious is by means of a mirror-based image of said individual according to certain external events. When you think of a mirror in general, it is the reflection of yourself. Have you ever looked at a mirror that was behind another mirror, which in turn shows multiple mirrors reflecting the same image of yourself? Almost as if you're stepping into multiple dimensions or parallel universes within the same room.
I've invented a parallel universe!
That's a mirror, Patrick. It's already been invented.
Oh! Somebody keeps stealing my ideas!
Well, I thought it was a pretty good idea.
In this example, it can be a possible clear picture of how we tend to shape more than one persona within us based on various external events in our lifetime, whether seeped into our subconscious or unconscious area, or the exact opposite. Now, of course, this is a subjective contrast of the idea of persona and collective unconscious. How this relates to the neurological in a scientific or psychological sense is a bit more complex than I can divulge.
No shit! This is your brain on the box. This is my brain on the box. Does anybody else feel like a fried egg?
Instead of mind-numbingly going any further, let's go on to the final portion of this acronym and call it a day.
Yes! yes! Oh, yeah! Can you feel that, buddy? Huh? Huh? Huh?
The final word being the letter A, which I have chosen, archetype. The creme de la creme to this acronym is the very nature of what we have been discussing, but by brief examples and actual acronyms. Specifically, the Jungian archetypes that make up the persona, as mentioned before in part 1 in the very beginning.
I don't remember.
Of course.
It's conceptualized as a psychologically universal idea of the self and the patterns of thought. The psychic instinct of our habitual repetitions of patterns. It can be considered a rejection to the idea that we are all born as tabula rasa, or blank slate, which was proposed by the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, the same man behind the allegory of the cave. No wonder he had this premonition. Well, this is awkward. I just realized after a year of publishing this vlog, I was incorrect. It wasn't Plato that originally started this concept of tabula rasa, blank slate. It was Aristotle, and through his theories and the theories of others like René Descartes, St. Thomas Aquinas, Ibn Tufayl and Ibn Sina, and Sigmund Freud. But the one who eventually modernized tabula rasa in a more detailed manner was John Locke, the 17th century empiricist philosopher who in 1689 wrote the Essay Concerning Human Understanding, in which he was talking about the concept of tabula rasa. And his concept of tabula rasa was the blank slate concept that I unfortunately misinformed upon all you guys. So my apologies there. It wasn't Plato. It was Aristotle that started, and then eventually other philosophers after him up to John Locke. Oopsies. Sorry about that. Now, back to your regularly scheduled program.
Dad, the TV's talking to me again. I'll call the exorcist. Yay!
Jung's concept of the archetypes takes inspiration from the philosophies of Immanuel Kant, Plato, and Arthur Schopenhauer. While he disproves Plato's argument which states that the concept of ideas is dynamic and in constant seeking of a need of expression to shape personality and behavior, his branching of the different personas and egos does hold relevance to Plato's original take.
Discovering it. Genuine inspiration, right? Now in a dream, our mind continuously does this. We create and perceive our world simultaneously, and our mind doesn't.
Harping any further on the difference between Plato's archetypes of personality and Jung's study of archetypes would take up way too much time and may risk potential illegitimate information. So please, for the love of God, do your own research if you are interested. These archetypes represented in the image you see before you show more than one persona and other conscious and unconscious concepts of the individual itself. In this video, we already touched on both the shadow and the ego, which are both well-known and thought-provoking concepts itself. In some ways, we can compare these archetypes to the theories and ideas like the Maslow pyramid or any hierarchical branch system. Each go through different stages. We'd like to also consider to compare the archetypes to the hero's journey. Each stage in life shapes the character's meaning and purpose, thus traverses through different cycles in the journey, such as the urge to discover more, the trials and tribulations one must face, and of course the transformations along the way.
I'm going on an adventure!
Stop, don't come back.
Keep in mind that while this was popularized by Joseph Campbell, this ideology was utilized in Jung's life as a means of psychological practices for psychotherapy and other medical research practices. However, this holds weight to a lot of metaphysical, philosophical, and spiritual applications in our everyday life. The key factor in all of this is the culmination of the persona and the shadow. When both are in perfect balance, this would result in the path of individuation.
You're repeating yourself, you know that? You're repeating yourself. You're repeating yourself. You're repeating yourself.
This almost sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Push and pull, life and death, good and evil, yin and yang.
Yes, the yin and yang is another popular example to the ideas of the archetypes and individuation. In fact, if I am correct here, in his studies and the books he published, he draws a lot of inspiration and workings from the teachings of Taoism and the yin and yang symbol. I believe this holds relevance to the Red Book, though leaves a lot to be desired.
What's the difference? What's the difference?
Though, to consider, one of the archetypes does bear similarity to the yin and yang, that being the anima and animus.
Once again, things that could have been brought to my attention yesterday!
In this instance, yang is described as the animus and yin as the anima. But what does this factor into? This is indicated as a preconceived notion that the yin and yang describes the male and female traits and personalities. The anima and animus dives much deeper than can currently be described, but it borrows a lot from the workings of Taoism. Nevertheless, each archetype is a stage in a person's life and could either go into a cycle, stagnate, or create a fixed, one-way destination. As mentioned before, ideally we want to reach the destination of individuation in order to find our true persona, or actualization of who we truly are beneath the subconscious. Reaching individuation is similar to achieving the balance, the Holy Grail, the Garden of Eden, and the path of success.
What's in the box? Nothing! Absolutely nothing! Stupid! You're so stupid!
Now, despite all this, you are probably wondering, is there a way to reach individuation? Or, how does any of this relate to the persona? Or even, how does any of this relate to what we have been talking about at all?
And the answer may surprise you.
Wrong!
I'm glad you asked. All that has been presented to you and all that has been talked about have one common connection. Experience!
Are you serious?
Well, in part. Each archetype of the individual's personas is formed through external experiences, but when attempting to be interpreted internally or mentally, it doesn't start off as empirical or solid form of said persona's buildup of identity. That's why it's difficult to convey exactly what the person is like or their said interests at face value. By actually talking with the person face to face and experiencing moments with them, can we per se make an attempt to understand each other and hence ourselves. The collective unconscious is a buildup of multiple experiences culminating simultaneously through time and entropy. Each cycle of life creates a new persona with every experience encountered, and it's either going to appear rigid or flexible based upon adaptability and patience.
I can't tell if he's serious, and that's very concerning.
Or at least that's what the combining research of Jung's, Schopenhauer, Plato, and Kant's work entails to us. There are slivers of ways we can easily spot portions of the archetypes in our everyday modern world. The easiest one being social media. You know how you have those trolls or commenters where someone is egging you on, or rage typing, or clicking in response that sounds very alarming and inappropriate? Come on. You know what I'm talking about here.
Mattel's new Populous Barbie comes with no brain and removable gag reflex. This is like really horny.
Now, of course, this is all theoretical. But have you ever thought to consider that when you're texting or commenting on something that you're projecting your emotions that could be more presumably your shadow, ego, Joker, or whatever other persona you have at play? This is not just about misinformation. This is about the context of the way we communicate with one another that renders the reader in awe and disbelief that we are attacked for having an opinion and would question the atrocity of such words. Keep in mind, in the United States we have the First Amendment right to freedom of speech. That being said, we always have to have a keen eye at the fact that these unhinged and unfiltered statements leave many questions.
How would you like your keen eye to watch my sure foot kick your smart ass?
I think I'm gonna have to stop here while I'm ahead because I'm dragging this on way too far. My point is that through all of this, our archetypes, personas, and personalities in general can be understood in a deeper and more complex realization than what we have been taught to comprehend, if we so choose to accept anyway.
I know who I am.
Regardless of who we think we are as individuals and how the everyday real world has shaped us into who we are, we can always consider the nagging voice in the back of our minds that's like, why am I working the 9 to 5? I just want to be an actor.
My shoulder angel.
Don't listen to that guy. He's trying to lead you down the path of righteousness. I'm going to lead you down the path that rocks.
I'll come off it.
You come off it. You Infinity.
However you slice it, we are more than capable of forging our own paths and discovering sides to ourselves we didn't know about or kept locked away for ages in order to find the key to unlock what was hidden. And once we peel off all the layers of who we think we are, we will discover who we truly are and what we are meant to be. That is the hidden destination that Jung talks about, the path of individuation.
Look at that guy. He's got that sissy stringy music thing.
We've been through this. It's a harp, and you know it.
All right. That's a harp. And that's a dress.
Robe.
Reason number 2. Look what I can do.
Remember, I am no psychologist, pathologist, neurologist, whatever have you. So please, always do your research, speak to someone who knows as much about the idea of the persona as I do, and finally, of course, do not use this video as a way of self-diagnosis of potential mental health conditions. Talk to a professional or your loved ones, please.
Where's the other guy? Yo!
Sorry, I'm late. Oh, what'd I miss?
Well, Yzma just tossed me this knife and asked me to, take them out. And then this guy popped up, and then we waited for you.
With all that said and done, another episode bites the dust.
Another one bites the dust. Another one bites the dust. And another one gone, and another one gone. Another one bites the dust. Hey, gonna get you too.
Hope you all enjoyed this 2-parter episode. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe and all that good jazz. There will be more new episodes in the foreseeable future, as well as a few other side projects I'm working on, so I hope you stick around for more. Take care.
So the persona is partially the result of the demands society has. And on the other side, it is a compromise with what one likes to be, or with what, or as one likes to appear. So,
in this respect, we do something extraordinarily odd. We define a person. Consider this for a moment, this word person. Harry Emerson Fosdick once wrote a book called How to Be a Real Person. And this, in translation, means how to be a genuine fake. Because the word person means a mask. The persona, the mask worn by actors in Greco-Roman drama, which was a megaphone-mouthed mask, so that through which persona, the sound goes. And so at the beginning of a play script, you will see the dramatis personae, the persons of the drama, that is to say, the list of the masks that the actors are going to wear. But the word has so fallen from its original use that to be a person has come to mean your real identity, your true, sincere, honest self, the person. And we say of someone then, he's a real person. That means he's genuine. But we have confused, you see, the individual organism with the person, with, that is to say, its role. And we have defined the role of the person in such a way that it condemns everybody so defined to perpetual frustration.
The following is for educational entertainment purposes only and not to be taken as actual advice or academia knowledge-based material resource. Hence, always do your research of credible information. Under the fair use copyright laws, this video contains pieces of copyrighted works which I do not own and were not specifically authorized to be used by the copyright holders, but which we believe in good faith are protected by the federal law and fair use doctrine for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, parody, or research, and is not an infringement of copyright. We believe this constitutes a fair use of any such copyrighted material as provided for in Section 107 of the U.S. Copyright Law. The following also contains unintentional suggestive content, opinionated subjects, and censored coarse profanity language that may not be suitable for different age groups. Viewer discretion is advised.